process of making a video game is a strenuous one, in all the ways you can imagine. Ensuring the engine is correct, getting artists to render environments, auditioning voice actors, hiring good developers, and everything else. As it's such a complex and mammoth task, many projects often don't see the light of day, or at least the interior lights of a storefront. Usually this isn't for concern. Many developers cut their losses if a project can't get off the ground and nobody ever finds out. However, there have been a few times when a game has been in development for months. It has a fan base, all the potential for greatness, but suddenly it's stopped dead in its tracks and is cast away like a fart in the wind. So with that odorous image firmly established, here are 10 games that would not have stunk and actually had a chance at Game of the Year had things not gone pear-shaped. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 cancelled video games that would have been GOTY. Number 10, This is Vegas. Las Vegas, the site of greed guzzling casinos, epilepsy-inducing light shows, and very few video games, oddly enough. This is Vegas could have changed that and solidified itself as an example of a great action game, had it not met its end before release. Set in the city of, obviously, Las Vegas, the game would have seen the City of Lights as the basis of its Saints Row style of glamour and guns. An open-world action/gambling simulator doesn't sound like the most unique gameplay premise out there, but Vegas's commitment to its setting could have differentiated it from its competition from Rockstar and Volition. The trailers also did a decent job of exemplifying exactly what is so interesting about Vegas. The lights visible from the moon, scantily clad dancers, the grim prospect of losing all of one's savings in one misjudged roll, and everything else. All of it was visible from the first glimpse, and it may have made its mark in how to properly convey a game setting. But Midway's bankruptcy and an overinflated budget killed any chances of this one coming out on PS3 and 360. Number 9, Dirty Harry. Movie tie-in games are rarely good at all, and there have been a few virtual adaptations of classic films that released before many consoles even came out. Both indicate a surefire failure, but Dirty Harry, developed by The Collective, with its open-world San Francisco and indicated morality system, could have shaken that up entirely. With assistance from Warner Brothers and Clint Eastwood himself, the game adaptation of the iconic franchise would be an LA Noire-style sandbox, in which you play the rogue detective hunting down baddies throughout the city. Hints at a good/bad way of playing, similar to the Infamous series, would apply based on how the game was played and how missions were conducted. A different spin on the sandbox crime simulator that GTA inspired so much of, the game could have been the gruff and grizzled sibling of Bondi's Noir, had it actually been released. And with Eastwood's involvement, it appeared as though it was going to be a definite hit on PS3 and Xbox 360. All seemed well enough, there was even a trailer released, albeit one with no actual gameplay, but due to budget stresses, Dirty Harry was officially shelved before it ever got a chance to shake things up. Damn bureaucrats. Number 8, Daredevil, The Man Without Fear. Superheroes are, if you haven't noticed, kind of a big deal right now, and thus superhero games are clambered after with vigorous fervor. 2018 Spider-Man saw the iconic web-slinging wisecracker get his shrine on PS4, but long before him, The Man Without Fear was receiving the virtual treatment. Developer 5000 Foot Inc. was asked by Sony to develop a tie-in game for the 2003 Ben Affleck film. Now that sounds like a treacherous venture into generic movie tie-in game territory in which hardly anything stands out, but Daredevil, The Man Without Fear had the potential to be something different. Sony wanted to implement grinding mechanics to allow Daredevil to slide along wires throughout New York to make up for his more limited traversal capabilities, and it would also feature a vision mechanic similar to the Arkham series' detective mode. These, along with the typical combat and upgrading of abilities commonplace in games of the time, would coalesce together to make a unique and interesting superhero video game, the likes of which wouldn't be seen until Spider-Man 2 for the PS2. Unfortunately, conflict between developer and publisher led to disputes over the game's direction, and it would never see the light of day, not unlike its protagonist. Number 7, Prey 2. Science fiction holds a strong presence in gaming. Deus Ex and the Mass Effect series effectively pioneered the genre in the virtual plane, and even modern titles such as Dead Space and Alien Isolation hold a prominent position in the sphere. Even with these strong titles, Prey 2 could have matched them all had it not been relegated to the area we assume the unedited original Star Wars trilogy is held. Playing as Killian Samuels, a US Marshal transported to an alien planet who's had his memories wiped, the game would have seen you take on jobs as a bounty hunter in a hostile city city that's not unlike Blade Runner's LA, inhabited by even scarier looking creatures than actual LA. Obviously, there would have been a lot more going on, but one of its first trailers featuring the Johnny Cash song Rusty Cage was captivating beyond belief, and it shot the number of eyes on the game to numerous digits. The gory but fluid shootouts, the grimy city, the towering behemoth at the end, the trailer is still worth watching to this day, even if it leaves a bittersweet feeling as we hold the knowledge that Bethesda shelved Prey 2 out of fear for its quality. They also thought Fallout 76 was good enough to release though, so yeah. Number 6, Whore of the Orient. History is a goldmine for game settings, so much so it's bizarre that a franchise like Call of Duty is the only one to have pulled it off to mass success. Even more strange is the concept of faux history and its lack of game adaptations. With that in mind, Whore of the Orient's concept of a Western-occupied Shanghai attempting to cleanse itself of communism was a bold and extremely fresh idea from Team Bondi of LA Noire fame. It plays up the real historical event of the Red Scare and plants it firmly in the skull of the player. Had they developed it further, Bondi's fresh take on detectiving and noir could have lent itself to Orient in unique ways, lending their attention to detail with 1940s America with engaging gameplay to bring something truly original and truly different to the gaming world. This just makes it even worse to know that Whore of the Orient was scrapped for undisclosed reasons, throwing any hope of historical teachings out the window faster than any scent of socialism in West-owned Shanghai. This stings more, especially considering Bondi's seminal noir hit. Orient could have been genuinely something special had it not been for its abrupt cancellation. Number 5, Gotham by Gaslight. Once again, we find a superhero adaptation like we do everywhere else in pop culture, but Gotham by Gaslight hits a little different than Daredevil. Based on the highly regarded graphic novel, Gaslight is set in a 19th century Gotham centered on Batman's attempts to take down well-known Victorian delinquent Jack the Ripper. Aesthetically, the game would have looked so much more impressively different than not just any other superhero game, but most other games in general. The setting of a 20th century city inhabited by historical versions of popular characters is a good sell on its own, and the early footage provides an eerie glimpse into foggy lamplit streets and its great render of the caped crusader. With the reason behind cancellation being THQ's failure to get the rights to adapt the novel, one can only read the source material to visualize what a full game would have looked like. With the Arkham series retired by Rocksteady, it feels like a natural next step to adapt one-off stories like Gaslight, but that's only if such rights can be procured and it's based off a great story, as Gaslight was intended to be. Number 4, Legacy of Kain, Dead Son. If there's only one early series that seriously deserves a new entry in glorious 4K HD, it's Legacy of Kain. The fate-altering vampire-led beat-em-up has had its fangs in PlayStation's neck since the first console sprang onto the market, and Dead Son was Climax Studios' attempt to invite the series back home. Old favorites Raziel and Kain were swapped out for a new protagonist in the form of Gain, a vampire who seeks revenge but becomes inevitably involved in a much grander story. Typical stuff for a game story, but the Kain series had proven it could deliver in a fantastic manner, so investment was high in Dead Son from day one. When news that the game's breathing was stopped, fans and writers were outraged, and many different outlets covered it, criticizing heavily the move to cancel well after so many people were invested in the franchise's revival. Many years on, and Legacy of Kain is still in dire need of a transfusion. Dead Son's wounds still linger, and many fans pine for the series to return to form. Number 3, Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings. This one comes as a bit of a stretch, but the Staff of Kings was originally planned for release on PS3 and Xbox 360 before it was reduced to only the earlier generations, so it still deserves a spot. Utilizing the Euphoria physics engine as seen in LucasArts' The Force Unleashed series, the game would follow Jones and his journey to find Moses' staff before the baddies do, in which case gun and fistfights would ensue in glorious ragdolly manner as with Starkiller's galactic antics. Staff of Kings is still available for PS2, but it's a damn shame the game never got a next-gen release. Indiana Jones is a series that would triumph on console under LucasArts, but it being played down to an earlier generation release means many mechanics that could have been potentially implemented simply couldn't be. Number 2, Star Wars 1313. A long time ago at a games convention far, far away, LucasArts premiered a trailer for an upcoming game under the Star Wars banner. Everything was so hush-hush that the details were demanded by everyone, and LucasArts delivered that and beyond with 1313. A ship swooping into view over a city we can only assume is Coruscant, the reveal of the protagonist, played by Wilson Bethel, who would portray Dex in Daredevil's third season, ironically, the gunfight at the end, the promise of a gritty and mature story in the Star Wars underbelly, it all sounded too good to be true. Unfortunately, it really was, as Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilms meant all current projects in development under Lucas were axed, including Star Wars 1313, and thousands of fan voices cried out, but were then silenced, as Disney gave the game licensing rights to EA. 1313 had the potential for greatness, giving gamers a thorough glimpse into the grimier stories within the Star Wars universe, and the fact that the protagonist was not a Force user was a breath of fresh air. Sadly, it appears we can only look to Jedi Fallen Order to see what could have been. Number 1. Silent Hills. Oh, Konami, once a very trusted developer, now the butt of numerous jokes and memes, mostly from disillusioned Metal Gear Solid fans, the widely acclaimed PT on the PS Store struck a particular chord with gaming horror fans due to its excellent depiction of a twisted, repeating hallway that gradually became creepier and more disturbing with every recycle. Thus, when the end of the demo was reached and Norman Reedus stood tall in all his GOTY glory before the Silent Hills logo appeared, fans went, to put it mildly, into a frenzy over the newest addition to Konami's psychological scare-em-up series. Alas, it was not to be, as director Hideo Kojima and the company came to blows. This eventually resulted in Kojima's exit from association with Konami and the subsequent cancellation of Silent Hills. Co-director Guillermo del Toro blasted Konami and announced he would not direct any more games due to the project's closure. The passion from the fanbase turned to rage, spawning a petition to convince Konami to continue the project, which reached nearly 200,000 signatures. But sadly, it seems the full, probably scarier version of PT will never see the light and will remain shelved in the darkest corner of Konami's basement. That's the end of our admittedly slightly depressing list, but let me know if we've missed any entries that would make your list for cancelled video games that could have been GOTY. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at Jess McDonald, but make sure you stay tuned with us here for plenty more gaming goodness. Thanks!